Good afternoon, everybody. It's 3:30, so we'll get started. Happy first day of spring. So welcome to the Communication Research Center's March Colloquium. My name is Michelle Amazine. I'm Director of the Communication Research Center and Associate Dean for Research at the college. Before we begin, I have a few housekeeping items to go over. Please silence your phones, any devices that beep, so as not to distract your neighbor, and we're also recording this. And if you're a student wishing to earn ComSona credits, be sure that you have checked in with our staff in the entryway. And I'd also like to take a moment to thank our staff. I see Luana back there, and Violet, and Amanda King, our lab manager. Thank you to you all for making this event possible. So our colloquium speaker today is Dr. April Yu. She is an assistant professor of mass communication, advertising, and public relations at the College of Communication. She holds a Ph.D. in communication from the University of Florida, a master's in communication from Purdue University, and a bachelor's in English from the Shandong Normal University. Her research areas include internal public relations, leadership communication, organizational change management, and corporate social responsibility and irresponsibility. Dr. Yu serves as the Chief Research Editor at the Institute for Public Relations Organizational Communication Research Center. She is an advisory committee member of the International Public Relations Research Conference, an affiliate scholar at the Internal Communication Research Hub at the University of Florida, and an affiliate member of the Global Strategic Communication Consortium. Additionally, she's on the editorial board of the academic journals Public Relations Review and Communication Reports. Her co-authored book, Strategic CEO Communication, is set to be published by Routledge later this year. At a point in time of enormous policy shifts in the United States, I'm so grateful that Dr. Yu is sharing her insights on organizational communication with her talk titled Internal Communication, Orchestrating Your Organization's Beyoncé Moment. Please join me in welcoming Dr. April Yu.
Thank you so much, Dr. Amazine, for the nice introduction. And thank you, everybody, for coming out on a Wednesday. Today's Thursday, isn't it? On a Thursday afternoon, and I hope your semester has been going well. So you might be wondering, what is this talk about? How does Beyoncé have anything to do with research or research talk, right? Well, think about Beyoncé as a brand or an organization. Internal communication would be like the head of her fan base, keeping everybody together in one place, keeping them engaged, and keeping them energized about Beyoncé. And so the way internal communication works is sort of like the conduit between Beyoncé and her fan club, and it goes the same way for an organization and their key publics. So today my talk is on internal communication, and if you don't know what internal communication is yet, hopefully by the end of this talk you have a better understanding of what is internal communication and what is internal communication research. So let's get started. So this is an overview of today's talk. I will first define what is internal communication and why does it matter, the values of internal communication in helping organizations succeed. And then I will go over some of the recent events and trends in the workplace and help you to understand the critical role of internal communication in helping employers navigating a ever-evolving and ever-changing workplace. Then I'll move on to talk about some of my own research on internal communication. It depends on how much time that we have. I might go over 2 or 3. And then we'll leave about 15 to 20 minutes for discussions and Q&A. So there are many stakeholders that organizations have to take care of and build relationships with. And broadly speaking, we can categorize them into external stakeholders and internal stakeholders, right? So my focus area is pretty much on this, on the right? So focusing on the communications between employers and managers, peer communication, so communication that happens between coworkers as well as between senior leaderships and employees. So internal communication broadly is defined as the strategic management of interactions and relationships between all employees within an organization through managing different communication processes. So that includes everything happening in the organization, informal and formal communications, right? So like I mentioned, the daily conversations between your direct supervisors and the direct subordinates, the communication sent by a company's CEO to its global workforce, and even informal chat and gossips are also considered part of organizations' internal communication. In other names, you might have read about employee communications, employee relations, and sometimes you hear people talk about internal public relations. So for the simplicity purpose, we can view it here as interchangeable terms. So internal communication sometimes is also being referred to as internal PR or employee communications. So why should organizations care about building good relationships with employees? And what makes employees so critical to organizations' success? There has been plenty of research in the field of internal communication showing that the power of internal communication is multifaceted, right? So the open line of communication between managers and their subordinates can help their subordinates better understand their work role, job responsibilities, what is expected of them in terms of tasks. The open line of communication between managers and employees also means that managers would be able to provide responsive, clear, and helpful feedback to employees, and therefore increasing employees' productivity and performance at work. So, but that's only one aspect of why it is valuable to make sure that there is, first of all, a clear line of communication, right? But other things or benefits include that managers have a critical role to play in helping employees understand why they're doing what they're doing, right? What is the value of their work? How's that, what I'm doing every day, aligned with the overall organizational purpose, vision, mission, and also values? And in addition to that, imagine having not only a competent and capable boss, but also compassionate and caring supervisor, right? So it makes employees feel more cared about, supported, and valued. And research also has shown that when employees feel that they're being supported, appreciated, and heard, they're gonna reciprocate back, right? To not just the managers that gives them that kind of support, but also reciprocate back to the organization as a whole. So previous research, right, has demonstrated that when employee feels a sense of, feel supported, they are more likely to show higher levels of engagement at work, passion, at work, enthusiasm toward work, and they're better performers in their organization. And they're also likely to go above and beyond their immediate work responsibilities to help out another colleague in need, right? So, work performance, engagement, that's one key benefit. And the other key benefit is that externally, right? So when employees feel that they're satisfied within the workplace, they take that joy out and they spread positive word of mouth. They do it voluntarily. You don't have to really pay them for them to do that. Because they're happy, they're fulfilled, they find a sense of meaning at work, they are willing to tell other people, hey, come work for my organization, consider applying. You see, like online review boards or websites like Glassdoor and their own anonymous feedback reviews. You see people posting both positive and negatives about their work experience. So happy employees make happy customers, right? So nowadays we really don't see a clear line between internal and external, right? What employees and how employees feel at work, they travel far outside of the organization to external stakeholders. So the number of research or articles that have been published on internal communication has been rapidly growing. My co-authors and I have conducted 2 systematic review of internal communication research being done for the past few decades, all the way back to 1970. And you can see that there has been a steady growth in the number of publications in internal communication research within the PR scholarship. So we only looked at internal communication research being conducted under a PR framework. And there has been research done in the management field, in the business communication field. We're not counting for those. And then you also see there is kind of a sharp increase, right? Since 2011, 2015. And another research, which I didn't put on the slide, also analyzed sort of the topic trends for internal communication discipline and how internal communication has been intersecting with other fields like organizational psychology, organizational behavior, and management, and as well as the theoretical and the methodological development over the years for the discipline. So in a nutshell, we're happy to see this. We're happy to see the growth of internal communication scholarship and the number of internal communication scholars in the field. Keep going back. So not only this is happening in academia, right? This is also happening in real life. You see a lot of professional publications are really putting a spotlight on internal communication. So this is primarily driven by the increasing challenges that organizations have to deal with in managing a multi-generational, diverse, hybrid, and politically charged workplace environment, right? People have been talking about engagement, employee burnout, workplace politics, and employee well-being, and hybrid work, and the impact of hybrid work on employees' well-being and thriving a long time ago. And this conversation is still ongoing and is going strongly and stronger than ever. And I'll just take an example, right? So the return to office policy, and we're seeing the companies, at least in the United States, has been doing it. And a lot of companies are implementing very strict RTO policy. Companies like JP Chase and Amazon can't say that they're threatening their employees, but they're kind of implying that you come back to work, or there would be consequence. So employees from JP Morgan Chase have posted their complaints on enterprise social media. So that's the internal social media that JP Morgan Chase have. And they're also posting their comments on public social media, like X and Facebook. So I remember one of the employees mentioned that they had to rebalance their work and life responsibilities because of the manager returned to office, and they have relocated. Now they need to, do it again, and they also just don't get it, right? So they think that there has been a lack of communication from the managers in terms of convincing them the value of return to work. Don't just tell us you have to come back to work. Tell us why, and what's the purpose and the meaning, and what's in it for me as employees, right? So many people have also posted that they feel like they're just being stuck on constant Zoom meetings, even though they're in the office space. So what's the point of even being in the same physical space together if you're not doing anything meaningful? And let's not mention, but let's do mention that AI and DE&I and ESG are further complicating the workplace, right? So it's really hard to keep up with what's going on in reality. But as a researcher, I've tried very hard to keep aligned and keep up with what is happening, despite the controversies related to such topics, right? So some of the recent publications that me and my co-authors published, including the use of AI, right? Artificial intelligence. How's that going to affect internal communication practice? What are the opportunities and risks involved in using AI in helping leaders draft their emails, their social media posts, and the role of internal communication in advancing organizations' diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives. This has been a highly charged issue nowadays, but we have data-driven evidence showing that people think that PR plays a significant and positive role in enhancing belonging, inclusivity, and diversity in organizations, not just as message conduits, but also as advocates and ethical conscience for their organization. Before I dive into specifics of some of my own research, I'd like to quickly walk over this recent statistics on employee engagement that was recently published by Gallup. It's interesting, isn't it? U.S. employee engagement sinks to 10-year low. Every year, I look at the employee engagement rate. It's telling me it's the all-time low. And this year is last year was no exception. Take a guess at what's the percentage of employees who said they're engaged with their work? 20. 15.
5.
55. 5.
That's 5.
That's a very large margin here. So nobody guessed over 50, right? Yeah, Sean, 55. If we average that up, it's probably around 30%. So 31% of workers said they're engaged at work. And the percentage of workers who said they're actively disengaged, right? Not just disengaged, but doing it actively, right? Slacking off, or being late for work, or leaving early. 41? Actively, that's a lot. 30? 10. I think some probably got it most closely to 17%, 17% workers. And what's left is, a majority of them falls in between, being not really super engaged, but also not super disengaged. Right? So a lot of work to do with this group of people here. So here comes the fun part, my research. As an internal communication scholar, here are some of the main questions I address through my research. So I look at the role of internal communication in driving positive employee outcomes, right? So that includes employees' job satisfaction, work engagement, employees' trust in the organization, their commitment and loyalty with their organization, their helping behaviors, their advocacy behaviors, and so on and so forth. Well, as internal communication scholar and practitioner, it is also critically important for us to become loyal consultants to our leadership, right? So we need to also tell leader what to do. So my research addresses leadership communication, specifically answering what type of leadership communication or channels for leaders to communicate with their employees are the most effective ones that would produce positive both internal and external outcomes. And I look at a specific organizational context, which is organizational change and disruption. Thinking about what's the role of internal communication in helping employees navigate turbulent waters and having employees on board with the change and showing not just being open to adjust to the change, but also being a positive advocate and supporter for the change. So this first research I want to share it with you is part of a bigger project. Part one of this project has been published in a journal, and this is part two, research in progress. We've done all the data collection analysis, we just really need to write the paper. So I want you all to think back to your first day at a new job, right? Maybe you felt nervous, excited, a little bit overwhelmed, or not really sure what is expected of you or how things really work in here. And there are two scenarios, right? Scenario number one, you have a manager or you have a supervisor or your advisor, right? Who would check in with you regularly, providing guidance on what needs to be done, clear directives, specifics on your jobs, and also communicating the reward contingencies and specific deadlines for a task. And this person also is providing support and encouragement, asking about not only your professional well-being, but also your personal well-being, and also help you understand the culture, history, and how things has always been done in the team or the organization. And you also have coworkers who are very welcoming, also providing support, advice when asked, so you feel like you belong as a new employee. Scenario number two, you are left pretty much alone in this process. People are very friendly, but mostly busy with their own work. The company's message also sounds impersonal and distant. You start to ask yourself, am I in the right place? And did I make the right choice? So this is what this research is about, right? I looked at new employees, organizational socialization. So socialization refers to the process by which newcomers adjust to work and assimilate to a new environment by observing, learning from, and interacting with members of the organization. Well, this is another astonishing number here. Half of US employees, over 50%, right, 51%, are actively seeking or open to new opportunities. And it has been an upward trend, according to a study by Gallup. So we know from research that employees' early experience in the organization can greatly shape how engaged they are with work, as well as how much trust that they put forward to this organization and their long-term relationship. But what still remains unknown is how to foster that, how to foster new employees' work engagement and their long-term relationship with their organization. So the key question I ask in this research is, what exactly helps new employees stay engaged and build trust with organizations in the long run? So I'm a communication scholar. I looked at mostly the communication variables or factors, right, that is happening within the workplace. Specifically, I look at two organizational agents, supervisors, so the newcomers, supervisors, and the newcomers' immediate coworkers, like people who work with within the same team. Because previous studies have again and again shown that those are two key socialization resources for new employees. Specifically, I looked at their communication style. For both leader and coworker, I examined their use of motivating language. So motivating language comes from motivating language theory, which is a leadership communication theory that derives from a linguistics literature that has been largely applied in business and management communication scholarship. According to motivating language, there are three types of communications or languages that supervisors can apply in their verbal communication with their subordinates to motivate them to do better at work. So direction-giving language is about communicating clear tasks, specifics, and work expectations, and do so in a timely and helpful manner. And meaning-making language, we mentioned this earlier, is about helping employees see the point or the meaning of their work and aligning their goal with the overarching organizational goal and missions and values. And then lastly, the empathetic language is to use words to offer comfort, reassurance, support, and encouragement. I also looked at transparent internal communication from a top leadership angle. So employees not only talk with their direct supervisors and coworkers, they also receive messages from the top, right? So you receive message from university president, we just got one today and yesterday. And you also get messages from the HR department, the PR department, and other organizational functions, and which are largely mediated communications, right? So I looked at that communication as well, focusing on how transparent and open the communication is. So the concept or the variable that I used in my study, transparent communication, is a key construct in public relations literature and internal communication literature. Just like motivating language, it entails multiple dimensions, right? Participation. So how open that the employers are in getting employees' feedback and engaging in meaningful dialogue, two-way dialogue. Substantiality is about providing information that is not only timely, but also high in communication quality. So not just throwing out all that can be communicated, but like pick things that are really important and that needed by employees. And then accountability is about being open to not just disclosing the positive things, rainbows and flowers, but also the negatives, the challenges, the risks, right? So that we have a holistic picture of what's going on in the organization. I know this is a lot of hypotheses, but overall, our underlying philosophy for this hypothesis is that we think motivating language coming from supervisors and coworkers, as well as transparent communication from organizations, would play an instrumental role and would help facilitate and drive employees' engagement and relationship quality with their organization over time. So that's all you need to know. You don't have to read it word by word. And this was the first longitudinal study that I did, which I'm super proud and excited. So we did a two-way longitudinal surveys. Survey 1, or time 1, was conducted in early 2022. We recruited over 500 full-time US employees who were newly employed. And 3 months later, we reached back out to this group of people, and we were able to get a majority of the people back to participate in time 2 survey using online survey panel called Prolific. And my co-author, who's data genius, used the latent change score analysis to analyze the data. So what we found is, I'm not sure if you can read the ones on the left, but if not, that's okay. I'll explain. So supervisor is the most important socialization agent, according to this research. So supervisor's adoption of motivating language does not only drive employees' engagement 3 months later, but also increase their trust, commitment, and loyalty to their organization. So that's that. You know, there's a direct relationship between supervisor motivating language and employee organization relationship, as well as between supervisor and job engagement. However, for coworkers' use of motivating language, we found that coworker only increase newcomers' job engagement, but not relationship with the organization, which makes sense because if you think, if you have a support team, a lot of capable and caring coworkers, you're probably going to work harder and put in more effort. But if the company culture or the top leadership doesn't really seem to be caring or feels distant, you're not going to develop a strong tie with the organization, right? And lastly, we found that transparent communication from the organizational level does not increase employees' engagement in their work. However, it does increase employees' relationship with their organization. So, which probably shows that transparency alone is not sufficient to make me, as the employee, work harder. I appreciate the transparency from the organization, but and I probably will develop more trust in it over time. But there is something more that needs to be happening to increase my work efforts and engagement. All right, I'm gonna just skip this and go to study 2 because I think we're running out of time for the talk part. So organizational change communication is another research area that I care deeply about. Organizational change comes in all sizes and types. It may be a small tweak in organization here or there, or it could be a complete overhaul. Examples include change in top leadership, organizational culture, structural changes like mergers and acquisitions, introduction of new technologies, generative AI, layoffs. A lot of layoffs are happening right now, right? That's big change for organizations, federal agencies in particular, or even relocation to a different state, right? A different place. So my research explores how can internal PR or internal comm facilitate successful organizational change by generating employees' support for the change. I like to use this meme a lot in all of my talks to talk about change. And change happens because you're either facing internal or external stress. And there's no doubt that COVID-19 has really accelerated the change in technology, new technology adoption, and innovative technology solutions in the workplace. And my research looks at the role of communication because previous studies have repeatedly found that when change is poorly communicated or not communicated, it leads to a host of negative outcomes for employees, including a decrease in employee morale, disengagement at work, decreased productivity, decreased loyalty, and also leads to employees. It also just increases the anxiety, stress, a feeling of alienation, which ultimately leads to the failure of organizational change. There has been evidence, strong evidence showing that employees' resistance to change is one of the main factors for the failure of organizational change. So my research in this area, in particular this study, intends to find out the impact of different internal PR strategies on employee response to organizational change. PR scholars have proposed two competing frameworks, and they're called the bridging PR strategy and buffering PR strategy. So bridging PR strategy is rooted in a philosophy that organizations' communication needs to be dialogical, two-way, and needs to operate under consensus and mutual understanding. And the message needs to be backed up by action, right? So it's only just, we don't just need to, so the saying that actions speak louder than words, right? Sort of reinforce this importance of using bridging PR strategy in organizations. So managers and organizations using bridging strategy are open to criticism and feedback, and they're willing to change their actions and willing to negotiate with employees or other stakeholders to come to an agreement, right? And buffering PR strategies is on the other side of the spectrum. It is extremely organization-centric and messaging-based strategy. It focuses on using PR as a type of control and manipulation. It emphasizes using symbolic messaging to build a positive image of an organization, overlooking or ignoring the public's demands. So in this study, I compared the relative effectiveness of using bridging and buffering strategies in influencing employees' change responses. And specifically, I looked at two variables or two outcomes. And in the middle, you can see that there's a mediator, what we call mediator here, employees' attitude toward change. So to what extent they're open to this new change that is happening or is about to happen. And what's on the right is the dependent variable called behavioral support, so actually showing actions to support the change. And I should also note that I further distinguished the type of behavioral support into three levels based on employees' level of engagement and involvement in their support. So there are different levels of support if you think about it, right? So there is support simply related to compliance, right? Simply showing, going along and comply with it without really going above and beyond. And there is this medium or middle level of support called cooperation. So you're cooperating, but you're not really doing it in a proactive way. And then there's this third level of support called championing. So championing is about really believing in the change and want to not just to go along with it, but also activate other people and mobilize other people, including coworkers, to support the change in action. Essentially, what I propose in this research is, if you recall, there is an underlying philosophical difference between bridging strategy and buffering. And because bridging PR strategy is a more ethical, relationship-based PR strategy, I propose that it would be more beneficial for organizations to use that in change management. So I propose that the use of bridging PR strategy would be positively related to employees' openness to change as well as their behavioral support for change on the right. On the other hand, I propose that buffering PR strategy would lead to less openness to the change because employees would feel they're being controlled and manipulated. And then there's, I propose mixed hypothesis on the relationship between buffering PR strategy and the behavioral support, which I'll explain in the results section. So I'll quickly walk you through the method. We again recruited targeted full-time employees across various industries and sectors in the US. Participants would be qualified for this study only if they have recently experienced an company-wide change, or they're currently experiencing it at the time of the data collection. And have some sample items, surveys items as an example here for bridging and buffering strategy. And I used that skill, modified it from Dr. Krishna's study, and because she did one as well on customers who learned a lot from your study. And data analysis was done using structural collision modeling, which you will have a chance to learn in grad school or a Ph.D. program. So what we found was, it's fantastic. We supported our hypothesis for at least one, right? So we found that bridging PR strategy indeed was positively associated with employees' openness or open attitude to the change, as well as the behavioral support. So openness to change is the fully mediate the impact of bridging PR strategy on the behavioral outcomes, meaning that bridging PR strategy first influence employees' attitude, which in turn translate that attitude into positive behavioral outcomes. However, somewhat to my surprise, buffering PR strategy, the less ethical one, also increased employees' compliance as well as cooperation during the change. However, this is really interesting. We did not find any type of relationship or association between buffering strategy and employees' openness to change. We also didn't find any association between buffering strategy and employees' championing, which is the highest level of support for change. So it looks like buffering strategy does have its limitation, right? So it, first of all, does not really make me think I truly believe in the value of the change. It does not make me feel like I want to support the change the best that I can. But for bridging strategy, it does influence all level of support. Okay, so quickly, the implications for this study is that the study connects one of the most important theories in populations with the change management literature. And it is among the first ones to identify the important function of bridging strategies in facilitating organizations' change. And it reinforces the idea to use PR as a strategic management function during organizational change. So not all public relations activities would contribute equally to the success of organizational change. It is really those that is rooted in relationship and action that would work more effectively in driving employees' support. So I know I'm running out of time. So another line of research of mine is on leadership communication, and I'm currently writing a book on strategic CEO communication. I'm having a lot of fun writing it. My research, or the main question that's driving this line of research is, how can leaders communicate with both internal and external stakeholders effectively, especially on social media? And if you're interested in some of the research that I did in this area, I'm happy to share it with you or send you the slide. And my ongoing research. Many of you are interested in research, especially for our students here. Some of the research that I am doing right now, internal communications role in organizational change, and specifically in helping employees build psychological resilience, and so that they can better cope with the change, and drawing largely from a theory called the communication theory of resilience. Another research I'm doing currently, working with Dr. Yan, is the impact of remote and hybrid work setting on employees' well-being. We're really excited about this research because we're doing a 4-wave longitudinal study. And another research of mine that I hope that I could, conduct given the current environment was on workplace inclusivity, especially focusing on neurodivergent employees. That would draw from literature, psychology and communication. We anticipate to conduct the interviews and surveys, and hopefully this year. Well, that's all I have for you, and thank you so much. I'm looking forward to the discussion.
Hi, Dr. Yu. Thank you so much for your informative talk. As we imagine that employees may use AI to help them work more efficiently. On the other hand, we can also use AI to bypass the efforts they should devote on their work. I'm curious, how do you think that AI can impact on the workers' work engagement, and how?
That's a great question. How does it affect workers' engagement? I think it really depends what type of work you do. And you can, there has been a lot of studies done on AI in the workplace, right? So on the one hand, we've seen that AI can increase individuals' creativity because then people can leverage sort of the answers provided by AI and then do further deep thinking on it, reflections on it, and come up with better and more creative work and results. But on the other hand, I vaguely remember it was a piece I read from one of the science journals showing that even though AI is increasing employees' creativity on individual level, it is actually decreasing the group creativity and creativity on an organizational level because it's all coming from the same pool of data. And so I'm not sure if it's a good thing or bad thing for organization, but it seems like there are mixed findings, results. It depends on just how you look at it and which level of analysis you're looking at it.
I promised not to have any question today, but Dr. Yu actually personally asked me yesterday to come up with a hard question, so I tried hard here. Out of curiosity, it's a communication, right? In the communication, we easily think the system is a two-way, top-down and bottom-up. And most of the communication, especially internal communication for the organization, is talked in the way that from the CEO level, from the manager level. Do we also look at systematic approach, like what's the bottom-up communication from the employee to the organization? Because we worked at a company for a long time, but it wasn't really easy to call what's the real communication going from the bottom up to the employee level. Like sometimes it's just systematically missing, or sometimes kind of hard to define what it is. Like how do we balance bottom-up communication to the managers and to the owners? If we can call these things as the real communication in the organization.
That's a great question. I don't think there is. If there's no system in place in the organization for employees to voice to leadership and managers, then there's no bottom-up communication, right? So that's it. It's communication is deeply rooted in the culture, societal culture as well as organizational culture. I think one thing I'm saying, which is a positive, is so many organizations, large, medium, and small, boutique, they all have their employee resource group, right? ERG, and then employees form different resource groups, and they talk between each other, share concerns, feedback, just sometimes crying and gossiping with each other. And that's a great way for managers to gather information from what employees truly want and what they truly need. But you're absolutely right that most of the communication we talk about is leadership communication, right? It almost feels one way. But in my research, I also look at whether there's a two-way mechanism there and whether showing you're listening to employees and you're really deliberating their ideas, feedback, criticism, whether that's going to make a key difference in how they perceive of you. Like the study I mentioned about buffering and bridging. And in the end of the day, bridging is about two-way. It's about not just top-down, but also bottom-up. The ability to participate in the conversations. Thank you.
Thank you. So I have a question for you. In the last few days, I've been thinking this about a couple of times. So it's about the major financial pressure given our own organization is facing. We've been receiving information from the leadership. So my question is about the relationship between the amount of information that employees receive about the change. Usually change is negative. And then the degree of motivation to cope with the change, to me, the relationship is not linear, but somehow quadratic. So at a certain point, too much information increases anxiety. So anxiety is a key mediator or moderator. So that really, at a certain point, hate to say this, but more negative information of internal communication to the employee's well-being, because the communication increases anxiety. What do you think?
I definitely think that there's a possibility, and my personal observation is that there's companies are not doing enough, right, in communicating change, and it's okay to say that for various reasons, like legal compliance or for other considerations, you can't disclose all the information for the time being. But to let people know that we've thought about this and that, and we've promised that we're gonna provide as much information in a timely manner is a good practice still. But I like to see through research whether there would be a non-linear relationship, right? Too little and too much information are sort of, and then the right, what is the right amount of information for employees, right? I think that's something that the literature hasn't really provided a good answer. We know that, providing substantial, transparent, open, as well as timely information is good, but the aspect on the amount of information and the frequency of communicating with the employees is largely unknown. I think there's great opportunity to do research in this area.
Yeah, like information overload.
Yes, absolutely.
Other questions?
Dr. Ria, thank you so much for the informative presentation. I have a question, hopefully it's on behalf of our Ph.D. and future Ph.D. students, that how did you get into this topic? What made you interested in this research? I know the trend that you did, projecting the change of number of publications, internal communication, it's peaked starting from 2011, and I know a lot of it is coming from you and you co-authors. So, how did you get into this? How did you know this type of research is gonna, flourish in the future?
That's a great question. I think it's driven by multiple reasons. So on the one hand, I have, during my PhD, I have great mentors and advisors who specialize in this area of study. There are two people that I mostly close work with, one research on corporate social responsibility, other research on internal communication. So my very first research article that came out was a combination of internal communication and CSR, looking at employees' perception of corporate social responsibility. And over the years, I've thought about whether I want to stick to it or Dr. Krishna, no. When I first entered Purdue, I wanted to study health communication. But over the years, I really feel that what is being missing in public relations is the internal aspect. There has been so many done on looking at consumers, looking at the community in general, the public's response to organizations' actions. But really, the number one stakeholder for organizations is its own people, and building a culture could not be more important in today's environment. And I see a great opportunity to do research on it, and I also see a sense of urgency in doing research in this area. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Yu.